NutriCast.
For me personally, is that walking the path of the gene keys and the golden path allowed me to fall in love with me. And I see many people say that they're with it for a period of time. That's that patience piece coming in. And over that time, they fall in love with themselves. And it's such a deep acceptance. And we must know ourselves to fall in love with ourselves.
Welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna Podcast. This podcast is meant to encourage you to connect within so you can share your light with the world. And now, here's your host, Harrison Ma.
Welcome, beautiful mystical beings, to another episode of the Cosmic Love Antenna. This is your weekly installment of your inner connection to your outer expression, where I, your host Harrison, here with the beautiful guests that I get to bring on the show, really set the intention of pulling back the layers, restricting health, alignment, and love. And today, like every other week, every other episode, we're going to dive deeply into all these different layers through the lens today of all things gene keys and light language. I'm excited to go into these topics with the beautiful guest I have on the show. Before I get to her wonderful, loving soul, as always, if you're new to this podcast and this show, welcome. If you are a regular listener, we can feel your energy. I appreciate you coming back. If you get some value out of these insights today, remember you can share these episodes out there into the podcast world with your friends, your family members, your lovers. You can also leave reviews and feedback for me and the beautiful guest on Apple and Spotify. And if you're looking for more tribe at the moment, you can join the Cosmic Love Antenna Facebook group. I would love to have you and see you over there. With that said, I want to introduce the beautiful being I have on the show today. The wonderful Anne Round is an intuitive healer. She is a powerful author. She embodies and expresses light language, which we're going to get into today, and she is a gene keys guide. And those two elements are really, other than her beautiful heart, those two elements are really why I wanted to bring her on the show to talk about these two areas that have many similar links. We're going to discuss what gene keys are, how they can help us on our path, what is light language, how we can channel it, what does it all mean, and then again bringing these elements together in a really cohesive spiritual chat. And welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna.
Thank you, Harrison, for the invite. And I'm delighted to be here to share love and light with all of your audience. It's always fun to jump into gene keys.
Right? Yeah, I agree. And I think we were just talking before we started recording about how grateful we are for the world that we live in, and that we can have these kinds of conversations and it be so normal. And when I project into the future, I think this is really what reality is now. Reality is talking about these things in a normal kind of way. Do you agree? Do you resonate with that?
Yeah, deeply. It's living a life in the flow is how I sort of look at it mostly. And just, having that global connection to places. I'm here in Victoria, BC. You're somewhere in Australia. And here we are connecting. I mean, this is what it's all about. And it's sort of that whole World Wide Web is just the beginning of the telepathy that is coming in the future. Yeah.
And yeah, it's just exciting. It's exciting. And I'm grateful to have you here today to have a chat about all this. And before we get into all things gene keys and light language, I want to really hear a little bit about your beautiful soul. And I think listeners tuning into this episode really want to sort of tune into who you are. So how I like to start these episodes is just a little bit of a background of your beautiful being. And I think a nice way to encapsulate that is really asking you the question, what was the big sort of pain teacher or lesson? We've all had multiple, right? But usually there's one big lesson that you've had in your life that really we can sort of pinpoint and has directed our soul to the work that we're doing at the moment. So I'm wondering, in your journey, what comes up when I ask that question?
So in actual fact, my journey was much more gradual. Various pinpoints did happen in my life. But actually, none of them were that traumatic moment in the extreme. So I had a much more gradual awakening. In actual fact, I feel that if there was any extreme, it was about when I was conceived after about 4 days. So that was there, and I came in somewhat awake and then fell asleep like lots of people. And then gradually through working in relationships, and I was a physical therapist or physiotherapist for many years, which was all in relationship to people, and the world just expanded. And I learned more and more about love and beliefs and things like that. And that's been my journey, is to awaken gradually. And I think it's important that some people realize that it can be gradual. It doesn't have to be this traumatic pain event. We can make the choice. I mean, I made the choice 25 years ago to begin meditating and to use it to calm and to have a greater grasp on just my life as it is, with greater calm, peace, love, and joy.
I think that's so important. And I agree with you. I do, and just to being honest, in sort of my opinion, my journey and story, that was it was abrupt for me. And I know it was abrupt for many people that listen to the show, but that's not the only option, right? We are beautifully nuanced and individualized souls. And I think, it's interesting when you said you came in awake and then fell asleep like many of us in the world. I wonder what a collective and a society would look like if that wasn't the case. I wonder what a collective and society would look like if instead of, and this is probably a whole other podcast we could do, but instead of being in all these educational systems and cultural government systems that did create the normal sort of system that does put people to sleep, what if they were all flipped? What if they were systems that, honored the awakening that we come into the soul as a human experience as? I wonder what that world would look like. Does that ever pop into your head, my friend?
So I think that's how I see sometimes when you do journey work and things, you'll journey to like a place called New Earth. Somebody will set that intention and there you go. And so when I have done such things, I journey and there's so much more freedom there. So one of my visions is that we're in this beautiful place, but it really is just Earth, because Earth is beautiful. And then we're doing artwork, but the artwork is just in front of us and we have no attachment to it. We do this art, we have the joy and the pleasure of creating, but it doesn't, and then the artwork in front of me just dissolved and it's done, so that the joy of living becomes our modus operandus. And that's a huge change.
It really is.
So that if we as adults can encourage children to maintain their joy as opposed to dampen it, then we're talking about creating a whole new earth. And that is happening. It is happening. I mean, there's a lot of things that are not in alignment at this point to that concept, but it is happening. And there has to be someone and some people that are creating that initial path forward, and that it is that path. So, I would see like school systems would be much more these wild schools, or, no longer sitting in chairs, the kids would be moving and things like that. And the individual needs of the child would be much more met. Granted, I also think that our society needs to have more community in bringing forth those children in their lives, because I think, the concept of an elder grandmother or such, that person brings so much more into that life. And everybody has like 4 grandparents. So those 4 people, and maybe even 8 more above that brings their point, their perception, their love, their immature ideas, if they've been on the planet a while, those things can allow all the blossoming of that, say, 4-year-old that we're looking for, and allowing that 4-year-old to become an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old who know themselves, love themselves, and can move forward in the world with confidence and awareness, and and courtesy and kindness and love. And those are those things, courtesy and kindness and respect of others. Those are the things that will change our world really quickly.
Yeah, I love it. And I agree with you. I think we are shifting. It's happening. And I look at the moment, I'm looking at everything that's come out of the pandemic and everything that's you would equate as negative at the moment, but where there is negative, there is positive. And a big part of the positive polarity of that negative polarity is everything you're saying, right? All these shifts are happening, and I see it even in my little world on this podcast, on this show, the amount of healers that I talk to, like yourself, that hold this awareness in their own unique perspective from their own journey with their own tools. It's just, I'm seeing it back to back to back. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. I feel grateful to be a part of it. And here's to the future. And speaking of paths forward, let's switch now into one of the main topics I wanted to hit with you here today, and it's all things gene keys. And this is one of your tools, one of your pieces of your medicine bag that you express your love and light through. And I've been wanting to do a show on this for a little while now. And as always, in how the universe works, I sort of just allowed divine timing to control it. And now we're here having the chat. So I think let's start with, a breakdown with what gene keys are. And I think a good place to begin is what you quoted. I'm going to quote you from when we had our pre-chat. You described gene keys as a path of illumination, as a path of illumination as we take a step forward. So let's start there, and maybe you can give us a overview of what gene keys are.
Yeah, so gene keys are a system that was brought in by a fellow named Richard Rudd. And he had a background has a diverse background, but he had a background in human design and very awareness with a lot of the I Ching. So that's sort of where it comes from. He had a deep level transmission, and he's brought it in the world. There's a wonderful book that speaks to each of the 64 gene keys. And there's a hologenetic profile that you can get online for free at genekeys.com that gives you a rundown of your profile. And that profile is bringing in astrology and the I Ching. So it's based on your birth date and location of birth and time of birth. So it's really about you in that moment that you came to Earth. So that's the basis of where the gene keys sort of evolves from.
Let me ask, my friend, why would someone look for it? So, for example, on my path, it sort of just falls in on my path. And I think we're all the same in certain degrees. But if let's say I'm in my healing journey, or I'm starting a business, or I'm wanting to start a family, where would gene keys slot in to help me? What does it illuminate? So, for example, I know that the shadows and the cities and the gifts are a big part of it. Maybe you can speak to that piece.
Yeah. So it's a self-illumination journey. So it's a journey you're going to go on, and it's inner work. It's coming in to you. So, and here's this profile of you. Then there is kind of a mapping. The profile is a map, and it's a map to what they term the golden path. And you go through various sequence called the activation sequence and the Venus sequence, which is about relationships, and the prosperity sequence, which is sort of your success in the world. And the activation is a lot about your sort of your genius, why you're here. So these, you can follow this path. And in that path, there are 11 spheres. And each sphere is one of these 64 gene keys. And within each gene key, they have been broken down into a shadow, a gift, and a siddhi. And a siddhi is a divine quality. So we always in gene keys tell people to always, when you look at them, the shadow should have about 10% of your attention, and the gifts and the siddhis should have 90% of your attention. And that's actually how I approached it. I really approached it in the gift and siddhi category. And what I did for the first year or so of learning about the gene keys, it was that I held the words. So there are words for your shadow, your gift, and your siddhi. So an example for me, and one of them is that it's gene key 46, and I'm the shadow of seriousness, the gene key of delight, and the siddhi of ecstasy. So when I was working, and I would think, oh, I'm delightful. And it was just a way of self-tending and using those words to move out of my serious nature and the shadow into this delightful. And I would sort of go, delightful, the light, and these sorts of things. And it was just a really easy way. Obviously, I dove into the book a bit and things like that. But that is certainly a great way for people to start, is to just hold the words, and then what do they mean to you? And so then you can travel these paths and look at the various words, and you can pick one sphere at a time. The part I love about Gene's Keys is you can do whatever you want to do. So if you want to blast through the whole thing super fast and just listen to everything and, purchase everything and that's fine. Or you could take one sphere and you could hold that one sphere for as long as you want. It might be a week, it might be a month, it might be a year, and you will gain insight. And a lot of Sorry.
Let me jump in here and super quick, because I have a lot of questions bubbling up. Let me ask about the shadows here, and you're doing such a beautiful job in illuminating this. And that's such a perfect word for what you're describing thus far. But with the shadows and the gifts, in my work with sort of shadow work, shadows are generally, or ideally, we would like them to not be fixed, right? We do shadow work and we bring shadows in separation back into the light. So I guess my question is, when applying gene keys to this kind of illumination work, what happens when we heal a shadow? What happens when so for example, I've got my chart up here. Let's say I have a shadow of exhaustion or dominance or discord. Is there not a point where I could transmute that shadow, bring it back into light, and now that's not there being activated?
Yes and no, because we have to remember that we are all one and we are whole. I mean, we can look at that in a group manner, but we can also look at that within ourselves. So really what we want to do is we want to allow, accept, and embrace our shadow. So we want to bring our shadow into our greater light, as you have said. That's the yes, for sure. And we can begin to see the other side of the shadow also, that has a positive quality, or where it might. So I'm going to jump back into my example of seriousness. I mean, there's a time in life where we need to be serious, And yet I can be serious on the exterior, and yet there's joy bubbling inside. So these are the types of subtle changes over time as we spend time with these concepts and words. And when we spend time, we're doing something that the Gene Keys calls the art of contemplation. So the principles of the Gene Keys are contemplation, inquiry, tenderness, gentleness, and patience. Mm-hmm. So these are really important things. But Richard wrote a beautiful book, and there's a lovely online course called The Art of Contemplation for those who may not pursue that activity already. And even those that pursue the activity, there's some lovely information in them. So that always that contemplation. So yes, we want to identify our shadows. We want to allow them to be present. Like, it's okay that I have seriousness. And then I want to just accept not only where that seriousness may arise today, but also where it has arisen in the past that I may or may not have liked it. And then I'm going, okay.
I think that's the very nuanced piece that you just said there. I think most of us, myself included, have these shadows, but we're resisting, we're suppressing, we're ignoring, we're adding judgment to the judgment, we're adding fear to the fear, we're adding separation to the separation. But when we can illuminate it, it's not disappearing, but now we're accepting, surrendering, acknowledging it as a part that is us, right? It's still us. And like you said, beautifully said, it has a space and a place, and it's that acceptance that brings it into the light, but it's still there. It's still there as something we could lean into at times of need, it sounds like. Let me ask my friend, so maybe I want to throw it back to you, and if you want to use my example of the Gene Keys here, and I can ask some questions. How do you want to do this in terms of the data that I've given you?
So, Harrison, you sent me your profile. So I had a look at that. And so I sort of broke it down in a few different ways so that I could explain some more and educate some people on some of the things about Gene Keys as we speak. So what I did is I wanted to talk about the activation sequence first in your profile. And so the activation sequence is made up of 4 spheres, and we call those the life work, evolution, radiance, and purpose. And they sit at sort of, if you want to look at it, because everything's in a circle on a clock, it's sort of 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. And so those things are just, they're really important about your life here, now, in your body. So I consider them very embodiment and kind of where we're going in that evolution. And radiance is an unconscious thing. And
everyone has these, right? This applies to, yeah.
These are with everyone. The spheres will be different. The keys will be different because there's 64 of them. The other piece that's here is that on Harrison's, so his has, as his life work, a 45.4. And the evolution is a 0.4. And then on the other side, it's a 0.6 and a 0.6. And these are actually the lines of the Gene Key, which relate to the hexagrams of the I Ching. So those lines are going to be different for everybody too, but there are patterns. So you have a 4-6, which if you've done human design, you will have come up to that information before too. So those have various meanings. The 4 is a real networker. They are serving people. Community is important. On the sort of other side, they can sometimes be people that really close the door quickly because they want to protect their heart. They don't want to be rejected. And all of those pieces sort of become available to you. And then on the 6th side of a line.
Let me ask a question, just a quick question with that, my friend. First of all, it's very, very accurate thus far, very spot on. And I think people listening can tune into some of the themes even here on the podcast. Just a quick question, just for my own interest. I know you've answered it for me before, but I want to hear you answer it for everyone listening. What is the quick sort of connection to human design? I think you described it as like a masculine versus feminine representation. Do you want to hit on that super quick?
Yeah. So human design is another system that was developed, and it is a little more on the masculine side, as opposed. So it has a lot more, to me, a lot more structure. There's a lot more, all these pathways and lots of numerical things, and there's sort of strategies and areas like that are very, this is how it is kind of thing. And the Gene Keys is a little more, much more the feminine approach. It's much more fluid. It's much more about motion and things like that. So that's how the Gene Key human design thing. I personally touch into human design a little bit, especially when I first started, and occasionally if I'm exploring a specific area, I'll touch back into human design, but I'm no expert on human design. I will say that for sure. And
I think that analysis of it and that feeling of it, of the masculine versus the feminine, I think is really accurate. And I think for people listening, it's not Anne is highlighting this, and just to confirm it with everyone, it's not an or conversation, it's an and conversation, and you sort of feeling into where you are in your journey at this moment and what is going to support you. Is it going to is the masculine sort of structure of human design going to give you some beautiful highlights, or is the feminine flow and fluidity of the Gene Keys that we're talking about now, is that giving you emphasis? So I think just for people listening, tune into that heart, right, and know that neither is wrong. It's just sort of where you're at right now. And let's go back to what you were saying. So I cut you off. You were continuing with the other two areas.
I was continuing with the activation sequence and talking about the 4-6 in your profile. So we talked of the line 4, and the line 6 is like the top of the hexagram, and that and where you have line 6s is they usually travel through a triad of time. So under 30, they're doing a lot of exploration. 30 to 50 or 58, and it may align with the Saturn returns or Chiron return. Different people say different things and experience different things, and that you're on the roof sort of busy doing life and things. And then beyond that, you move more into your service to the world, and your essence glows and shows a bit more, is how I think of it. And you move more into a role model. The 6 does have a sense of the future, where like line 1 person has a very grounded and a little more sense of past. And then line 2 is like the dancer, and it's about expression, and it's moving together and things. And then line 3 is a real changer and likes things to change. They don't like static, and they want change. And then line 4 is, as I say, the sort of networker and very people orientated. And then the line 5 is considered sort of a leader, and they're very focused, I find. So that's just to give you a quick rundown sort of on the lines and things that you would learn more and more about through journeying through this golden path.
So thank you, my friend. That was a lovely description of it. And the themes of what I'm getting thus far, and I hope everyone else is getting this impression, because this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it with you, is that it helps us realize that we were born with a path. I think a lot of us, myself included, can sometimes get to the point where we feel confused. We feel confused about what the hell am I doing? Why am I here? What are my gifts for? What is my passion? Am I alone? All these sort of esoteric, abstract questions that can leave us in a lot of separation, sadness, anxiety, even depression. And what you're describing not only is resonating with me based off everything I've seen in my past and this present moment, but it shows me that if I truly tune in, I can listen and I can see where these paths are activating when I'm sort of taking a step off and where I can take a step back on. Do you see this? I know because you do this with clients, my friend. Do you see this sort of awakening to people's paths and their passion and their purpose when you do this kind of work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In the activation sequence, one of the pathways, we call it the core stability, from the radiance to the purpose. And the core stability is like, this is why I'm here. And this is holding me. And it just, and as you can hold that purpose gene key, you understand, like my purpose gene key is actually, force, strength, and majesty. And I realize how important that gift of strength has been to me. The strength to be different, the strength to voice my voice, those sorts of things. That's what that is my purpose. And the strength to say, I love you to everybody I meet when people go, she can't love everybody. That's impossible. But it's just those things. So that's just an example of that. So that was that. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and keep it flowing. So let's take it to the next level here. I think we'll hit on maybe one or two more things, and then I want to make sure we have time to talk about your beautiful light language. But what else is sort of important to understand?
Okay.
here?
I'd like to just talk a little bit about the Venus sequence and the Pearl sequence, and I want to bring Dream Arc in briefly. And so the Venus sequence is the next path, and it involves your purpose, your attraction, your IQ, EQ, and SQ, which are intelligence, emotional, and spiritual quotient, and it ends in something called your core wound, which translates eventually into your vocation. And so, I just looked at yours, and for your attraction, you have 15, and it's a 0.6. So there's another 6, a future looking a bit. And one of the things that a 6 needs to do is build trust. And they just have to watch they don't get absent from life. And then the 15th is dullness, magnetism, and fluorescence. So fluorescence is flowering into the mystery and holding it. And then the gift of magnetism is bringing that, attracting that. And that's in your attraction. You have magnetism in your attraction field. Attraction fields are what magnetize us to each other. So, those sorts of things, everybody will find those things in their chart when they let them just flow in and just be with them. And that's that art of contemplation again. And then the Pearl sequence is the vocation, the culture, and that goes back to life work, which we now call brand. And then in the middle is your Pearl. And so those ones, for you, what I saw in your chart was you have 40 in 2 positions, and in the position of culture and in the position of your Pearl. And Gene Key 40 is exhaustion, resolve, and divine will. Mm-hmm. And that one is really about what we've been talking about, flowing with life. And, the sort of statement of thy will over my will, and that type of thing. So, you have a 0.3 and a 0.2, the lines, and, so you're wanting, and the line 3 in the culture is working in a unit. You like working in units. So that's interesting.
Let me jump in there super quick, Anne. So that it's an interesting connection to human design, because that's another theme that's come up in human design for me, is working less solo and more in a unit. And I guess it's interesting. And let me ask a question with this. For me in my life at the moment, that is yet to flourish, right? And I can, I definitely have visions and ideas of expansion and all the different ways I want to lean into it. What would you suggest for me as the individual that wants to lean into that environment in which I flourish when looking into the gene keys? Is it just a matter of taking inspired action? Is it a matter of sort of just following the things that feel good? How would I start to embody that piece more, in your opinion?
Well, with that 40 in there twice, it would be mostly flow and allowing. And if you get exhausted, you're fighting the river. So paddle with the river, because it always ends up at the ocean.
Love it. All right, continue. You were saying something.
Yeah. And so we also have something called programming partners, because in the I Ching, in a circle, you have on the other side another gene key. And for your 40, that would be 37. And that's weakness, equality, and tenderness. So gentleness is always going to be a quality that you need to do. The other point I will say in an overall manner is with your 6s in here, which your vocation actually also has a line 6. And I really focused on the lines for a long time, and I often will. I find it just a nicer, broader way of holding some of these things. But the line 6 in that triad I spoke of, you're only coming into the beginning of your second phase, to go on the roof, to observe the world, to create what you create. And that doesn't mean you're not going to do all sorts of things, because we do, but you may be moving from less experimentation into more, this is a route I'm taking. This is where I'm committing. This is where my devotion lies.
More of the flow and the allowing.
And more of the alignment to your whole being, as opposed to just trying everything. Often we'll say of a line 6 that they've kind of done a bit of line 3 throughout their earlier years in those gene keys. But that was that. And then what I wanted to just present to people was that Gene Keys Publishing, or the company, has just launched something called the Dream Arc. And this is a brand new system, certainly all about developing intuition, all about going inside, all about your connection with nature and the elementals and all of that. It's just amazing. And it just brings in this sort of new flavor for those that what I've been describing doesn't appeal to. And so we can relate these they also still work in keys and 3s and triads. And so I'm back to that gene key 40, and there's a fear key, a life key, and a vision key related to an animal. So that is, the fear key is wasp, the life key is cat, and the vision key is robin. And so then there's, in the Dream Arc, you'll find there's different things that they'll label. Like the wasp is fear of meeting boundaries. The cat is relaxed resolve. And then the robin is a vision of the sacred flame, which of course divine will is the sacred flame. So, for me recently, in just pursuing the Dream Arc, this cat, I happen to have 40 in my chart also, and the cat has been coming into my liminal space and into my dreams and things, and I'm just like, relaxed resolve, just relax, let divine will occur. So that's
the dream piece. So first of all, and thank you for that beautiful breakdown of all the different pieces of my gene keys and the different elements. I hope that my intention for Anne really breaking all of that down was to help you listening, you beautiful souls listening, why this is important, how we do it, and how it sort of impacts us, and for you to feel into if this is something that you need in your life, right? And for me, just to hit on that, and I want to go back to what you said about the dream element, because I think it's so important in itself. But the gene keys, like I've mentioned before in this chat, have sort of flowed into my life at the moment to have some deeper awareness around. And what I would encourage people to do as they're listening to this episode and what Anne just explained, ask yourself if any of that resonated, right? And if it did, if you felt called to the different lines, the different aspects of the gene keys and the detail of it, I would suggest you lean into it, because I know, if I can just speak from me personally, and even with you and just describing all of that, it felt so calming, right? It felt so calming. Speaking of allowing and flowing, as you're explaining all these things, none of those pieces that you just spoke about, there was nothing inside of me that was like, oh, like it was all like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That feels good. That feels aligned. That feels familiar. Or it's like, oh, I'm excited to step into that. So just to summarize this gene keys piece, because I want to speak a little bit about light language here today. I really encourage you to do this kind of work, either if it's with Anne, with another practitioner out there. But remember that it needs to resonate in your heart, because there are so many tools out there now that, and this is unique in itself, but there are many tools out there now that provide guidance, not this exact same, but, along this spiritual path. But what is most important is the love that we're channeling through it. And if that is not there, then the tool could be the most powerful in the world, but there's still going to be disconnection to it. Does that resonate with what you're sort of saying, my friend?
Absolutely. And what I would say for me personally is that walking the path of the gene keys and the golden path allowed me to fall in love with me. And I see many people say that. They look at their hologenetic prophet, they're with it for a period of time. That's that patience piece coming in. And over that time, they fall in love with themselves. And it's such a deep acceptance. And we must know ourselves to fall in love with ourselves. And this piece, whether you do it through the dream arc and the creature kingdoms, or you do it through the words of the gene keys and the big book that's written about it that tells you all sorts of wonderful things, it is about knowing yourself. And once you know yourself, then you can fall in love with yourself. And when you fall in love with yourself, then love starts radiating off you into the entire system of the collective of humanity and the world and the cosmos.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful way to encompass this work. And so I want to shift to light language now, and just to put a little point on that dream piece and the animal work, I'd encourage people to go listen to a couple episodes I've done on dreaming in general. Also, I did a episode a couple of months ago talking about totem animals and the power of animals and the reflection of this work. So definitely check out that episode if you want to dive deeper onto this topic and how sort of now Gene Keys is bringing that into this work. I want to shift now into light language and speaking about gifts, right? And illuminating your path. In my sort of awareness of light language, which is still minor, and that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I wanted to ask you questions about this. But light language is one of the many gifts that we can tap into as light beings, as multidimensional beings of light with gifts and spiritual senses. And in my experience, and this is where I want to start with you, Anne, when light language has come into my world, it has helped me do just that. It's helped me fall in love with myself, to realize that there is so much more here beyond the physical 3D reality. So I guess with that foundation, Anne, I'd love to ask you, what, in your perspective, what is light language, and why is it important for us as either the individual that's channeling it or the person that's receiving it?
So, okay. Essentially, light language is a healing. And so it is a vibrational frequency that our brain cannot grab. And, we were talking earlier about judgment and things like that. And this is the key. We need to bypass our brain and mind and calm our nervous system. So my experience with it is that when I utilize it, people will have different body sensations often. And I don't know, did you experience that yourself? What was your experience?
Well, so I'm going to ask you about this in a second, but so I haven't, in my journey, I'm yet to channel it from my end. But when I have received it and been in the presence of someone that's channeling it, it is definitely a bodily sensation, right? I'm feeling some releases. I'm feeling some resistance moving into expansion and letting go. So yeah, I have theories on that, but yeah, continue with what you're saying.
Yeah, so that is the type of experience people will have. So for myself, originally when I began speaking, which I was doing it, and I was on an energy medicine course, and it began, and I used it to heal myself. So I would just speak it to me, and as I speak to me, it does move out because we're on that cosmic web of connection and interconnection. So that is the basis of it. It is a healing by bypassing the mind and allowing frequencies to change. So it can really, I found for me, it was really into my solar plexus, and I could just feel this vibrations moving into my solar plexus and just easing. And I didn't need to know what it was and things like that. So as far as, being it happening, I think it just starts for some people. And I'm not sure, I never certainly went out to seek it. I had to figure it out. It happened, and I had to go out into the world and figure out, oh, what is light language? And of course, the universe provided me with a perfect reference of Judy Satori and her work, and she did a little online workshop or something just after that, so we're so taken care of.
So let me ask about that, Anne, because that's the piece that, and I'm just speaking from my perspective here. This is sort of, I'm in this at the moment. I've shared this on the podcast before. Excuse me, listeners, if you've heard this 100 times, but I am in the moment moving through a mystery school, and a part of my mystery school is opening up to a lot of these gifts in general, and light language is part of that. And I'm yet to unlock it or receive it, however you want to describe it. I'm wondering, when you did that mentor and that education came into your world, I know a big part of it is allowing. I know a big part of it is switching off, or lovingly telling that ego mind that it doesn't need to know. It doesn't need to break it down. It doesn't need to decipher it. What are some other tips you would give someone like me or someone listening in the podcast world to receive this, to be open to it more, to start actually, channeling it and expressing it?
All channelings will happen when they happen. And that is Gene Key 40, divine will. It is a mystery. It is the part of the mystery. There is no, why was I chosen to speak it and the person who sat beside me wasn't? I can't answer that question. And we as humans, what I do here is you're striving slightly, right? I'm in a mystery school, and I part of it is wanting to do this. So there is this desire. Well, in actual fact, in your gene keys, desire is the shadow of your spiritual quotient. So I would recommend lightness and rapture, which are your gifts and cities. I'm not trying to throw that back for you. I mean, here it is. No, it's right in front of us.
I appreciate it. This is why this work is beautiful and why it connects together. I love it.
And you're a line 5 in that. So you'd like to be, well, for that gene key, it's called mentoring, a role model with integrity. You want to be a leader in this, And so this just makes so perfect sense. So the answer to your personal question is lightness, and hold lightness to it, and rapture, and it will it will or it won't. I can't, there's no one's going to guarantee it. There's zero guarantees, but, removing that human need and of desire. I mean, desire is, it's beautiful. Desire has so many wonderful, passionate qualities to it too. And it has that other side of the coin where it can lead us a little astray, and it can then move us into where we want to dominate what's happening, and then all sorts of shadowy type things occur. So yeah, so that's quite fun actually to make that connection.
It is. Well, and it's divine in itself, and it's beautiful. It's given me a lot of dominoes, and I'm going to process and sit with this later. Two quick questions here. Define rapture for me. I have some feelings around it, but how would you define rapture? Is it just sort of getting lost in the ecstasy and the beingness of life? How would you define rapture?
Whoa, good question. I work on this one because I find that. So rapture for me, there's Shakti is raining down upon us when you're in rapture. That's how I have to think. I'm just getting goosebumps everywhere. We have Bhakti and Shakti, which is Bhakti is moving upwards and Shakti is moving down. And if I have that wrong, I apologize to the world, but details are not my specialty. I'm very intuitive. And so it's that Shakti coming down, that rain of the mystery taking over. And it's just observing it and being in it. Like, I couldn't decide today whether to discuss Gene Key 40 or Gene Key 15 more. So I go out on the deck with my breakfast, and who's out there? Oh, there's a robin in the garden mucking around. And he was made sure I saw him. There was no question. And I'm like, oh, Robin is the animal from the dream arc for Gene Key 40. I'm going to really be focusing on Gene Key 40 today. So that's the universe raining down upon us, and being in that mystery and holding that mystery within our human body. That's embodiment, letting our divine human take place, letting the love come in, flow in, and then it flows out and flows wherever it wants to go. And it's none of my business where it's going. But our human nature really, really wants to hold what's it doing? Why did that happen? Oh, I felt energy move out to the homeless man or just somebody walking down the street. And you go, well, I don't know, and it doesn't matter to me, but it did. And I trust it. It's coming into that deep, deep trust of life.
That's a definition and a half, my friend. I will, I'll take as my throat just expresses there. That's a beautiful definition of rapture. And I'm going to sit with that and lean into that more. The other question I had that bubbled up that I wanted to ask around light language and I want to get you to express a bit of light language here before we finish the show. With light language, my understanding is some of us, when we channel it, we can have a definition that comes with it, like an interpretation of the light language. And some of us don't. They just channel the frequency and trust that the frequency is received, because that's a whole other side of this. Many of the things that we channel, it's not entirely about the ego mind definition of it. It's more about the frequency that is both received and then shared if we decide to share it. So I guess my question here for personally and for people listening is, when we start to open up and we start to receive light language, is it something that we just need to, and I think I'm already getting the answer, but is it something that we need to trust in terms of getting the definition and translating it? Is it something that is an option? What does that look like for each individual that starts to receive the light language in terms of the meaning and the definition behind it?
So for myself, I don't get meaning and definition. I occasionally will, but it's pretty light. And I really think we need to stop searching for definition. I think that is human ego at its best. We really don't know what we have, what we imagine, what we think of. Yes, it's all vast, yet it's always through a lens of this body that went through this conditioning, came through this mother, came from this father, came through this ancestry. There is way too much of all of that present. So definition is really thing. So it is just enjoy it. Sit back, absorb, and allow the tones and frequencies to simply do their job and not get caught up. I mean, it's a human catch, right? It's a hook.
That was the answer that I was getting as I was asking the question. I was like, but I'm happy you explained it for everyone else's sake. And it's a theme that I think with all these gifts that we start to express, and I say this to myself and anyone that needs to hear it, the heart space, which is a big part of this show and everything we're talking about today, there's really a fine line between the balance of giving and receiving love, right? And I think we need to apply it to these sort of gifts, and whether it's the light language we've been talking about today, whether it's all the different gene key paths and the cities and the shadows, keep coming back to that in many ways. Where is love needed to be given? But where am I just needing to just receive in this moment and to allow the frequency, allow the message, allow the expression or the gift that's being shared with me to just move through me, and to remember, and maybe I'll get your perspective on this, that when we are receiving and just being and allowing, that is us being, that is us, I don't want to say doing, but that is us being worthy, being valuable. I know a shadow that I often fall into, and I see it in the collective, is that if we're not taking action, if we're not progressing, if we're not moving forward, if we're not expending energy, then nothing's happening. And people don't see me using my hands, but putting inverted commas, nothing's happening. And that could not be further from the case, especially with what we're talking about here today. What's your perspective on that, my friend?
So,
a lot.
Odd. Yeah. So we are love. We are love. Everything is love. It's another word for the oneness of the universe. And that is our beingness. It is always present. So, and our beingness is just going to flow forward. One of the things that I always sort of think about is, like, for me on receive, which I recommend people be on receive so that your body is listening, everything is listening. So you're catching what's going by. That's being. That's just being. We are on receive whether we want to be or not. So that is simply being. And then I often come back and talk about becoming. And that's when I think of love in action. And so I'm becoming, I'm sending something out, I'm expressing something. But again, I actually don't really feel like I know what another person needs. I barely know what I need on those subtle energetic levels. Like, I know I need food, water, and drink, and, shelter and fun and things like that. But do I know what
is their highest good?
The absolute highest good for every individual who is going to encounter what I'm putting out there in the world? No, I don't know that. But I have to trust that I still am going to put out, that I'm going to, I know we're going to speak it a little bit later, but like, I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and that was me putting it out. Well, there was a part of me that put it out because I want my kids to kind of read it. Well, they may never read it. They're going to follow their own path into their intuitive journey ahead, and it may not include that book, but I still put it out, and so part of my need was, as a human, was to put it out. Energetically through that book, there's all sorts of other things that are passing through. I don't know what they are. That's just an example.
And I think it's a beautiful one, my friend. And it shows that I agree with you. I think who are we to assert or even go deeper into what other people need? But what we can do is stand in our light, stand in our love, stand in our beautiful frequency. So whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a speech, whether it's whatever, and be the mirror so other people can find themselves in us, right? Because if we are all beautiful expressions of a one source, whatever your name for that source is and you feel comfortable with, we can understand that while we can't assert what people need, we can be the mirror for them to look into to find themselves if they decide to step into it, right? Because the reason I'm attracted to you, Anne, is because the things that I like about you, whether I'm consciously aware of it or not, are in me, right? When you talk about light language, right, and I resonate with that, I resonate with your beautiful skills because there's also a part in me that has those same skills. And it's saying it another way, when I love another person, I'm actually loving myself, right? When I love Anne for all of her beautiful gifts in the world, it is self-love because there is a part of me that either is aware of the pieces that I love of her that are in me, or is unaware and wants to love those pieces.
Right. And the thing I would just add there is that you really do have to be in that place of self-love to then truly express a love to another. You can't hold them in that container if you don't have that container for yourself.
Yeah. What a lovely place to sort of land this chat now. And I want to have one more final question that we're going to bring some light language into. But before I get to that, Anne, if the beautiful listeners of this show have tuned into your heart, your work with Gene Keys, your understanding of the light language, or just you as the individual that you are, and they want to reach out to you, they want to find out more, you talked about your book. Is there anything that you want to share with people listening so they can dive deeper if they wish to?
The best way, if anybody wants to contact me, is AnneRound.com, and there's a website, and it talks about my book and it talks about me, and you can just contact me, and that's how I like to deal with people. I love people to come to me for assistance. I let them reach to me as opposed to I'm heading out there type thing. So.
And your book, Anne, is about parts of your life? Is it about what does it hit on?
So my book is 29 essays, and it sort of discusses all sorts of subjects like trust and grace and death and all sorts of things. And it's it's a little bit about my life and pieces in there, and then different things. And it covers a bit of shamanic journeying and things. And it's a lot about experience and things like that. So I'll just hold it up, and then people can see that it's called Essences of Truth, Inspirations for Loving Life. And that's my artwork on the front of it.
It's a beautiful cover. For people that are just listening, a lot of reds, a lot of purples, a lot of violets, I love it, my friend.
Yeah. And anyway, that's available on Amazon and things like that, or you can contact me or whatever. There's an audio book, and so people can do whatever they like with that and enjoy it the best they can.
As always, beautiful listeners, if you want to connect to Anne, go to the show notes of this episode and go to the details of your podcast player, and you'll see the links to Anne's website. And I'll probably put it's on Amazon. You said the book, yeah. I'll put the Amazon link in the show notes as well. I've had a very lovely chat with you today, my friend. Thank you for spending time with me. As we finish here, I have one question that I end the show with all the time. And I thought it would be interesting to, one, hear you answer it, but two, open up your channel and maybe channel some light language to see what comes through in relation to this question. And the question I ask everyone is, the name of this podcast is The Cosmic Love Antenna. And we've hit on it in many different ways today, but I define love, and it sounds like you define love as that beautiful spiritual heart and cosmic heart that we all have, that is God, divinity, source in many ways, is made of love. So I'm wondering, my friend, how do you define, what is your definition of that love word?
So I have another little thing that I do. It's a game, and it's called acrostics. And you take the letters of a word, like love, and you translate them into something else. I'm sure everybody's heard some of those. So mine for love is light of vitality everywhere.
I love it. It's beautiful. It hits that heart space, and it's simple to receive. I love it. Do you want to, is there anything moving through? Let's see if you feel comfortable with it. When we open to receive some light language, does anything come through for you?
The only thing is I'd like to have a sip of water before we start.
Go for it.
And
take your time.
Then I will just start. I can feel that I always get this sort of sensation on the left side of my throat that it's ready. So I will do that. Normally how it transmits is I do some actual language, and then I move into song, some higher vibration that is actually more song-like. Yep. And then I'll do a third piece that is back to the language. And I usually do a couple of deep breaths in between so that people know what's coming.
Let's do it, and take your time with it.
Ayamaya momia muma rinyana ralali unyunyushtinya. Akina kara kokokoya. Mahanya nanana ninino nunanya nyanyonya. Anya hanya iya oni nyanya nonoloria. Aya aliri mariuya aya are uya ya alai. Ishka mishka kari, ayahui milianya, murimianya, shitichika kekilukuri, la taticha, makarketikili karipkorikanikadichikanya, achino rumio rimika, rana tatetina talukuritina tafika makarikukukishka. Akalika, akalika, akalika. So sometimes I just get a little bit of vision as I'm saying it, and I saw the earth, the globe of the earth, and like the love, and like these arms of love sort of stretching around the globe as I said that last little piece. It was very beautiful.
You took the words out of my mouth, my friend. I was just about to jump in, and as you were finishing, and say, I'm on my other end here, closing my eyes, just receiving. And I didn't see the arm piece, but I saw a golden globe. Would you say golden white globe as you were expressing? So yeah, I'd love to, just for people listening, if you received that and had time to listen, let me know what you received, because I think these downloads that come through, I think as a collective, there's a message not just for the individual, but for the collective in general. So leave your comments and reviews, reach out to me on social, and I'd love to hear it. And thank you for sharing that with me today. Thank you for sharing your love and your beautiful presence, your gifts, all the things around gene keys and light language. Beautiful souls out there in the listening world, thank you for bringing us your attention, your time, your love. We hope that we've given you some awareness and some deeper layers to take in your journey today. If you got some guidance, please share this episode out with a friend, a family member, a lover. Leave your feedback in reviews. But until next time, here on the Cosmic Love Antenna, both Anne and I love you very much, and we wish you a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow Harrison on Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse at Harrison Ma. That's Harrison, MEAGHER.
Electricast.